Claire is no longer with the company. That's how she started it. Right there, in front of everyone, the interns, the engineers, the design team holding their Starbucks cups like props. She didn't even flinch. I was still holding my coffee. Still thinking this was some kind of mistake. But Morgan didn't blink. Just smiled like she was announcing a rebrand. Like she wasn't getting me in front of 30 people I'd worked beside for 4 years. Want to know how we got here? Buckle up. 3 days earlier, I'd pitched a systems overhaul that would have saved the company over $600,000 in redundant roles, 2 of which just happened to belong to Morgan's friends from her yoga studio. I didn't think much of it. I thought we were trying to grow smart. But I should have known. Morgan didn't like losing control. She liked being the sun. And I'd just cast shade. That Friday, she called me into her office before anyone else arrived. No small talk. No close the door. She was already sitting, perfectly angled so the blinds behind her made her look like she glowed. HR flagged a few things, she said. I blinked. Like what? She slid a file across the table. Empty, except for a printed expense report and a few red-circled vendor names, all of which I had full approval for. Her voice dropped, like she was pretending to be tired. Claire, this is bigger than you think. Some people feel like you've been overstepping. That was the first sign. Not the lies, I'd seen those before. It was the calm. The way she wasn't reacting. She was performing. This wasn't spontaneous. It was rehearsed. She tapped her pen. Let's not make this harder than it has to be. My throat went dry. Are you firing me? She tilted her head like a therapist in a Netflix show. Let's call it redirecting. I stared at her. You know these charges are false. And you know perception matters more than fact in a company like this. She smiled. Take the weekend. Think about how you want this to play out. I did. I really did. But I had no idea she'd already planned the real show for Monday morning. The all-hands email came at 8:12 a.m. Quick sync by the south stairwell at 9 a.m. sharp. Bring coffee. No agenda. No context. I assumed it was about the new product roadmap. Maybe another one of her motivational spiels about grit and hustle. Instead, I walked into a trap. She waited until the room was full. Standing dead center in front of the frosted glass stairwell doors, blazer buttoned, hair perfect, voice soft and steady. And then she said it. Claire is no longer with the company. Just like that. No warning. No explanation. I just stood there blinking, holding my mug, heart in my throat. I could feel eyes swing toward me. Jenna in product. Will from finance. Even Maya from HR looked confused. Someone dropped a pen. The sound hit like a gunshot. Morgan didn't flinch. We thank her for her time, but we're moving in a new direction. Then she handed me a folder. HR packet. Exit paperwork. All dated. All signed. I hadn't signed a damn thing. The message was clear, I could walk out quiet, or I could go down swinging, and lose everything. You can pack up your things by noon, she added. Security can assist if needed. The silence that followed felt like a funeral. No one knew what to say. I nodded once. Slowly. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I turned. I walked. My desk was already half emptied. They'd deleted my Slack access before the announcement even happened. Google account, locked. Work laptop, remotely disabled. It was like I'd never existed. But my name was still on 3 major vendor contracts, 2 platform licenses, and the quarterly budget report Morgan was supposed to present on Friday. I grabbed my coat, my plant, and the framed photo of my sister that had sat beside my monitor since year one. And then I walked out, back straight, eyes forward. She expected me to be devastated. To spiral. To beg. And yeah, for the first 24 hours I did cry. On my couch. Into a glass of boxed wine. I watched my email fill with shocked messages from coworkers and passive-aggressive LinkedIn DMs asking if I was okay or taking time to realign. I said nothing. Because I already knew what she didn't. Morgan thought she buried me. What she didn't know was this: I'd been keeping notes. Years of notes. And some skeletons don't stay buried, not when you know exactly where to dig. When someone publicly destroys you, everyone watches for the fallout. Will she post something dramatic? Go nuclear online? Call in sick for a year and drink wine at noon? They expect you to combust, or disappear quietly, anything but stay still. So that's exactly what I did. I didn't react. I didn't defend myself. I didn't correct the rumors Morgan let bloom across Slack like mold on fruit. I simply walked out of that office and went silent. I left the city 3 days later. No goodbye party. No exit dinner. I let people assume I was humiliated, maybe in therapy, maybe halfway to Arizona trying to find myself in a yoga retreat. The truth was quieter than that. I moved into a short-term rental 20 miles north, an empty 2-bedroom condo owned by a former colleague's aunt. Unfurnished, dim, but private. I bought a mattress, a kettle, a lamp, and one folding chair. I kept the place cold and undecorated. I wasn't planning on staying. This wasn't a home. This was a hatchery. Each morning I woke up before the sun, turned on my laptop, and started building something. I didn't name it. I didn't talk about it. I just started pulling threads. Morgan thought she ended me. She didn't know I still had admin access to 3 supplier portals, 2 internal knowledge bases, and an archived company drive that hadn't been properly shut down. I didn't do anything with it. Not yet. I just looked. Midway through the first week, a recruiter messaged me out of the blue. She said she represented a boutique venture capital firm and that someone from my old world had put in a quiet word about me. I stared at the message for a full minute before typing a single sentence: happy to talk. Thursday works. What I didn't tell her, and what I hoped Morgan hadn't figured out, was that this firm, Crestline Ventures, had just wrapped up a funding round Morgan had desperately tried to get into 2 months earlier. She didn't make it past the second meeting. I accepted the interview. Not because I wanted the job, but because I wanted them to remember my name when she came knocking again. The VC partner I met with, Elena, was sharp, kind, and genuinely curious. She asked why I left my last job. I paused and smiled. Let's just say it was time for new leadership. She didn't press. Just nodded slowly, like she understood more than she said. At night, I worked a quiet consulting contract for a logistics firm. Small team, small goals, clean structure. I helped them identify vendor bottlenecks and train their ops lead. It paid just enough to make my exit feel like a choice, not a collapse. But I wasn't there to rebuild. I was there to study. To remember what good leadership looked like. What accountability felt like. How information moved in a healthy system, and how it stalled when power got sticky. On my 3rd week, something strange happened. I received a LinkedIn notification that Morgan had blocked me. I hadn't tagged her. I hadn't posted anything. I wasn't even active on the platform. But there it was, that sudden inability to view her profile. The block wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was surgical. Precautionary. She was scared. That same night, I noticed something else. A comment had vanished from her company's Instagram post, the one where she stood in front of a whiteboard full of sticky notes, captioned, "New structure, new season. Resilience in motion." Originally, one of the engineers had commented, "Shame Claire isn't around to explain that structure," with a little side-eye emoji. It was gone now. I didn't screenshot it. I didn't have to. The next morning, I logged into one of the supplier portals, one that hadn't been reassigned since my departure, and noticed a vendor ticket from 3 days ago. Confused routing, pricing error, and no one had responded. I read it twice. The system was crumbling without me. Slowly, quietly, but inevitably. Morgan had inherited the throne, but she didn't know how to wear the crown. A week later, I was having lunch outside a cafe when a former vendor rep, Josh, recognized me. He walked over cautiously, sandwich in one hand, tablet under his arm. "Claire?" I looked up, heart still but alert. "Hey, Josh." He exhaled. "You just disappeared." I nodded. "Needed air." He pulled up a chair without asking. "They're flailing without you. We've had 3 billing disputes in 2 weeks. No one answers emails. We actually thought you were still running things from behind the curtain." I smiled faintly. "Nope. I'm not involved." He watched me carefully. "But you're watching." I didn't answer. That was enough of an answer. That evening, I checked Morgan's LinkedIn again through an old private profile I'd used back in grad school. She had updated her title to founder and executive strategist, a role I'd proposed 2 quarters ago, back when I was still naive enough to pitch things that would make her look good. Her header image was now a stylized photo of her on a Women in Tech panel, with the words "Vision is the new currency." There were comments praising her courage and innovation. But one caught my eye, a subtle one. Someone named Natalie from an adjacent startup commented, "Incredible journey. I'm sure Claire's groundwork made this possible." The comment had 0 likes. I checked again 2 hours later. It was gone. I didn't know who Natalie was. But I made a note to find out. By the end of week 4, I felt something shift, not in me, but in the atmosphere. The silence wasn't passive anymore. It was pressurized. People were starting to whisper again, but not about what happened to me, about what might be happening now. A former coworker forwarded me a screenshot of an internal Slack message from one of the engineers. "Anyone seen the vendor workflow doc Claire built? It's missing from the archive." There were 3 responses. All of them were versions of Ask Morgan. That night, for the first time, I printed something. Just 1 page. A mock-up. Morgan's LinkedIn profile, except her new title had been crossed out in red marker, replaced with the word, "fabricator." I didn't post it. I didn't even take a picture. I folded it in half and tucked it into the back of my notebook. I wasn't ready to show my hand. But it helped me sleep. A few days later, I returned to the city for an errand and stopped by a bookstore near our old office. The cafe next door still made the same overly bitter espresso she used to love. I sat by the window for a while, flipping through a novel I wasn't really reading. That's when she walked in. Morgan. Hair back in a perfect bun, high-collar blazer, phone in one hand, eyes scanning the room like she owned it. She didn't see me at first. She was too busy adjusting her coat, checking her reflection in the window. But when she did see me, really saw me, sitting there, calm, alive, unbothered, she stopped walking. Her face changed. Her smile dropped. And for a brief second, she looked human. I didn't wave. I didn't flinch. I just held her gaze for a full, silent beat. Long enough to feel it land. Then I stood up, tossed my cup, and walked out without looking back. She hadn't seen a ghost. She'd seen a reckoning. But that wasn't the end. That was the first time she saw me. It wouldn't be the last. The first true rupture happened on a Thursday, 9:13 a.m., according to the timestamp on the screenshot someone sent me. It was from the internal dashboard of the company's investor relations portal, and it showed a cancelled quarterly sync between Morgan and one of their primary Series A partners. The event title had vanished, the calendar invite revoked without a reschedule, and the partner's EA had replied with only 2 words, "Concerns escalated." That wasn't a rumor. That wasn't a deleted Instagram story. That was disruption, sharp, sudden, and undeniably real. That same morning, a journalist from TechStream reached out to Morgan's team for comment on an anonymous financial flag sent to our tips line regarding payout structures and internal audit gaps. I knew this not because I read it on a gossip blog, but because one of the junior PR consultants who still followed me on Instagram sent me a message that just said, "Did you do this?" I didn't respond. She didn't ask again. At 2:47 p.m., one of Morgan's senior engineers posted, and quickly deleted, a vague tweet that read, "I didn't join a startup to end up in legal redlines every day. This isn't what innovation looks like." It had only been live for 20 minutes, but that was long enough. Screenshots were already circulating. A Slack channel I'd once helped build, Ops Culture Core, apparently exploded with speculation. Someone asked if I'd come back under an alias. Another replied, "Nah. But it's got her fingerprints." By Friday, another shake hit. A partner firm they'd worked with for logistics, not the one I consulted for, but adjacent enough to share contacts, pulled out of an auto-renew clause, citing contractual misalignment and historical inconsistencies. That clause had been solid when I wrote it last year. The only way it could have become misaligned was if someone, likely Morgan, had tried to revise it without understanding how the back-end documentation flowed. She was unraveling her own systems without even realizing the wires were still hot. And then, the document incident. At 11:09 a.m. Monday, Morgan logged into the Ops Wiki to pull an onboarding guide for a new client. But instead of the version she'd approved, the auto-populating doc reverted to an older cached file, one last touched by me, 7 months ago. It included a section she'd once ordered removed entirely, a breakdown of reporting bottlenecks tied directly to her micromanagement during the product-to-market transition. She saw it. She froze. And according to the Slack logs I was sent, she messaged the product team with a single demand: "Who the hell reactivated Claire's drafts?" No one had. The system had simply defaulted to the last clean version when their newer template failed load verification. Something they'd know, if I hadn't been the one who built the autofail logic into the draft pipeline to catch internal tampering. That night, Morgan called again. This time not from a blocked number, but from her real phone. My screen lit up, her name glowing in the center like a challenge. I let it ring. I stared at the screen until it went black. She left another voicemail, longer this time, and I listened with headphones on, every word slow, measured, clearly rehearsed. "I don't know if you're watching any of this, Claire. Maybe you are. Maybe someone's making things look worse than they are. But if you know something, or someone's using your name to stir things, we should talk. I don't want this to go any further." I played it twice. Then I uploaded it to an AI transcription tool. I highlighted the line, "I don't want this to go any further." Not because I needed proof of fear, but because I wanted to study the tone. She wasn't angry. She wasn't posturing. She was cornered, and she didn't even know what direction the walls were coming from. By midweek, things took another turn. Her executive assistant, Danny, resigned. Abruptly. Publicly. Her LinkedIn update included a line that read, "Sometimes integrity means walking away from power." It spread fast. Too fast. People started talking. Not just the whisper crowd, real stakeholders. Names I recognized. The board. Strategic advisors. People who'd stayed silent when I left but were now circling, sniffing for the source of the rot. Then came the internal memo. It wasn't sent to me, of course. But it was forwarded. By someone inside. No alias. No secrecy. Just an email header that said, "Thought you'd find this satisfying." The memo was from Morgan, addressed to the leadership team. Subject line: Emergency Strategy Review. Language used: operational missteps, audit discrepancies, supplier escalations, foundational documentation vulnerabilities. And the most important phrase: all system frameworks established prior to Q2 must be re-evaluated for legal and structural risk. That sentence was everything. It was an admission, veiled in corporate speak, buried under action items, but still an admission. She was unraveling what I had built, piece by piece, trying to fix what she didn't understand, and now she was calling it a liability. The best part? 2 days before that memo hit inboxes, I'd sent one small email from an encrypted burner address, no name, no signature, to their external legal firm. Subject line: concern regarding intellectual property misattribution in internal system documentation. Attached, 3 redline drafts. All mine. One of them clearly republished under Morgan's name, post-termination. I didn't say she stole it. I didn't say anything at all. I just let the lawyers connect the dots. After that, the PR firm dropped them. Quietly, but visibly. A small update on the agency's website removed Morgan's company from their client list. No announcement. Just a vanished logo. And then, the message came from someone I hadn't expected. Nate. He'd been one of the quieter engineers when I was there, smart, skeptical, kept to himself. His DM landed late one night, simple and direct: "We know she didn't build this. Some of us always knew. Tell me what to do." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Not with a plan. Not with instructions. Just one sentence. Tell the truth. The following day, he did exactly that. On an internal feedback board visible to all staff, Nate left a comment on the system ticket requesting clarity on structural gaps in supplier contracts. His note read, "These gaps weren't here 6 months ago. Claire's process accounted for all of this." What changed? It wasn't a bombshell. But it was public. Unignorable. Morgan's team archived the board within hours. But someone had already saved the thread. And then came the final crack: a tech reporter reached out directly to Morgan for a quote. She responded via her press contact. But what she didn't realize was that the reporter had already received a packet. Anonymous, of course. But thorough. Included? A timeline of internal decisions. Redacted Slack screenshots. A list of employee departures since my firing. 3 strategic deck slides, all initially authored by me, now watermarked with her name in the company's latest pitch deck. I didn't leak it. But I knew who did. And I knew where they got it. Because months ago, I built those decks on a mirrored drive. Morgan just never thought to check who owned the mirror. That was her mistake. And her mistake was starting to shine. It happened faster than anyone expected. That was the part one planned best, the acceleration. You can throw a stone into water and watch the ripples, or you can drop one into a frozen lake and listen for the cracks. I chose the second. And once they started, the surface didn't just tremble, it shattered. The first crack hit on a Monday morning. The audit report I had been quietly seeding through the right hands for weeks finally surfaced, not in a blog, not through backchannel Slack threads, but in a printed packet that landed on the desk of the company's external legal counsel. It had everything: altered vendor agreements, skipped approvals, system rollback metadata, and the most damning part, a sequence of document revisions that showed Morgan rebranding my system builds under her name. The report didn't accuse. It just showed. My fingerprints were all over it, and hers were written in red flags. Within 72 hours, 3 major clients pulled out of renewals. One sent a formal letter requesting clarification on leadership transitions. A supplier Morgan had underpaid went public on LinkedIn, tagging the company and posting screenshots of missed invoice escalations. One of the Series A investors quietly called in a third-party compliance review. The firm that had originally vouched for Morgan's appointment as CEO locked their doors and offered no public comment. And then came the big one, the summit. She was scheduled to speak on day 2, closing keynote. I'd known that months ago. I also knew which journalist she'd pitched an exclusive to. So I timed it. The night before her speech, I sent one last anonymous drop to that reporter, internal emails, slide decks, before and after screenshots, a memo with her initials approving process rollbacks she claimed never existed. I didn't have to explain it. I just let the data speak. She showed up at the venue, all black blazer and practiced smiles. What she didn't expect was the front row, not filled with adoring fans or product nerds, but 3 legal associates she didn't recognize and the journalist holding a manila folder. She paused on stage, blinked once, then twice. She made it 4 minutes into her opening story before her face faltered. The reporter stood quietly. He didn't interrupt, just raised the folder slightly. That was enough. Her voice broke. She cleared her throat, muttered something about rescheduling, and walked off stage. Cameras weren't rolling, but phones were. Within an hour, the clip was on Twitter. I watched it loop in a window on my laptop, sipping my coffee like it was just another Wednesday. The board didn't even let her speak at the emergency session. They presented the findings, not as an accusation, but as a liability. We are at reputational risk, someone had said, according to the notes I was later sent anonymously. Operational blind spots tied directly to post-Q2 decisions. Misuse of inherited systems. IP entanglements. They didn't fire her. They gave her a choice. And she took it, tail tucked, voice hollow, spine gone. The resignation was filed before noon. She tried to get ahead of it, posting a carefully worded message about stepping aside to refocus her energy on new ventures. But by then, no one cared. The Slack channels didn't mourn. The LinkedIn comments were bland. Even her closest allies stayed silent. She had burned through every ounce of goodwill trying to be the face of something she didn't build. And when the scaffolding fell, no one caught her. Now, here's what people don't know. Here's what I never said, until now. The downfall wasn't spontaneous. It was stitched together, one thread at a time. I tracked every document she altered. I mirrored every system she touched. I created a private folder months before she fired me, labeled "In Case of Morgan." It held emails, draft decks, budget notes, and chat transcripts she deleted but I had saved before the server wipe. And more importantly, I tracked the chain of approval for every deal she signed after I left. I didn't just know where the bodies were buried. I laid the foundation of the graveyard. When I left, I took nothing, not legally. No files, no leaks. But I remembered. My mind was the archive, and when it came time to rebuild the narrative, I did what she never thought I would. I stayed silent and let my name resurface without needing to scream it. She thought the worst part of firing me was the optics. What she didn't realize was that firing me made me a ghost, and ghosts remember where the doors creak. I never messaged her. Not once. Not after the call. Not after the summit. Not after her resignation. But I did get one last email from her, 2 days after she stepped down. The subject line was blank. The body was 2 words, "You won." I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to myself. Filed it under a folder titled Closeout. And then I added one more file to my private drive. Her resignation letter. Signed, time-stamped, and now the most widely shared document in the company's history. Not because of what it said, it was dry, cold, scrubbed of anything human, but because of what it represented, that someone like her could fall, not with a bang, but with a calendar update. The team never reinstated me. I didn't want that. But they did reach out. Several of them. Some asked if I'd come consult, quietly. Others asked if I'd build something new. The offers were flattering. But I wasn't in a rush. I started drafting something instead, not a revenge plan, not a tell-all, but a new framework. My name would be on this one. No borrowed logos. No approvals needed. Just mine. And as for Morgan? She disappeared, mostly. Some think she's rebranding herself as a startup coach. Others say she's launching a podcast. I don't keep tabs. I don't need to. Because no matter what story she tells now, everyone remembers the silence that followed her fall, the kind that only happens when the people clapping were waiting for it. So what happened to me? I started writing again. I started building again. Not quietly, this time. The next company won't bury me. Because I own the shovel now. And this time I'm the one laying the bricks.